Hello and welcome to my channel. So today's videos are going to be all about the assassination attempts, and there have been a lot of them, on Alexander II of Russia. On the 4th of April 1866, Alexander was out for a walk in the summer garden at St. Petersburg. As he was leaving the garden by the northern gate and walking towards his carriage, 26-year-old Dmitry Kirikozov shot at Alexander. But he wasn't successful in his attempt to kill Alexander. Standing next to Dmitry was Osip Komissarev, a hat maker's apprentice. He saw Dmitry with his pistol aimed at Alexander. So the quick-thinking Osip hit Dmitry's hand, making it so that the shot that was intended for Alexander was fired into the sky instead. The crowd managed to get hold of Dmitry, and the Tsar asked him why he had tried to shoot him. Dmitry replied that he was angry that Alexander had lied to the people. He said that Alexander had promised the people land when he abolished serfdom in 1861, but instead the people had to buy their land from the state. Dmitry was put on trial and executed in 1866. Osip was granted an hereditary nobility. To celebrate Alexander not dying, a number of churches were built in many Russian cities. The next attempt on Alexander's life didn't happen in Russia, but happened in France. Alexander was in Paris attending the World Fair with his sons Vladimir and Alexander. While out in a carriage with Emperor Napoleon III of France, 21-year-old Polish man Antoni Berezowski ran up to their carriage and shot at close range at Alexander. Alexander was okay though, because Antoni's gun exploded, wounding his hand and sending the bullet into a horse. Antoni said that he planned to kill Alexander in the name of liberation for Poland. Poland at the time being part of the Russian Empire. Antoni served 40 years of hard labour, being set free in 1906. On the 2nd of April 1879, Alexander went for his daily walk without his guards around the Winter Palace. As he got to Moyka Embankment, Alexander was shot at by 32-year-old Alexander Soloviev. The shot missed and Tsar Alexander ran for his life, but the shooter Alexander ran after him, firing 2 more shots at Alexander, but again both of them missed. A gendarme who was out on patrol managed to catch up with Alexander Soloviev and hit him over the head so hard with his sabre that it actually bent his sabre. Soloviev fired another shot and managed to get away. He was chased by a crowd of people and managed to fire another shot before he was caught. Now, Alexander Soloviev was actually a member of a terrorist organisation. He said though that he had acted independently to his terrorist organisation, but had acted in the spirit of the programme of his party. Soloviev was hanged on the 5th of April in St. Petersburg. Around 70,000 people watched his execution. Alexander and his family had been on holiday in the Crimea and were on their way back to St. Petersburg by train. A terrorist organisation, the People's Will, decided that they were going to blow up Alexander's train. So when Alexander and his family travelled by train, they always used 2 trains. The first of the trains carried the royal family's belongings along with their servants, while the royal family followed 30 minutes behind this first train in the second train. So the People's Will knew that this was going to happen, so they placed 3 bombs along the track on the route that Alexander's train would take. The first one near Odessa, the second one near Alexandros, and the third on the approach to Moscow. But these bombs did not achieve their aim. Firstly, the trains changed their direction, so they didn't go through Odessa, so that bomb couldn't go off. The bomb at Alexandros just didn't go off. And the third bomb did go off, but it didn't go off on Alexander and his family's train. Further up the line, the first train that had been carrying all their supplies and their servants had been delayed. So Alexander and his family's train went in front. The People's Wheel thought that Alexander's train was the first train carrying all their belongings, so they let it go through. But when the next train came through, they detonated the bomb underneath the fourth carriage, thinking that they were killing the royal family, but instead they just destroyed a load of fruit. In September 1879, 22-year-old Stepan Kauterin applied for a job as a carpenter at the palace. This job allowed Stepan to have a room in the basement, where, unnoticed, he managed to store around 32 kilos of dynamite. On the 5th of February 1880, Stepan exploded all of the dynamite in his bedroom, which was 2 floors below the royal dining room. Alexander was meant to be in the dining room meeting with his brother-in-law, Prince Alexander of Hesse, but the prince was running half an hour late, so Alexander was not in the dining room at the time of the explosion. The explosion did kill some people though. It killed 11 guards who was in the room between Stepan's room in the basement and the dining room, and wounded 56 others. Stepan managed to escape, but he was hanged in 1882 for his involvement in the murder of a military prosecutor. In this attempt, the People's Wheel placed a bomb under a bridge that Alexander was going to pass by, but the person that was meant to set off the bomb didn't show up at the right time. So the final assassination attempt did successfully kill Alexander. On Sunday the 13th of March 1881, old style the 1st of March because Russia had changed their calendars around that time, Alexander was travelling back from a military roll call. He was travelling in a carriage with 2 sleighs that had the chief of police and Alexander's chief of guard on them. On the street that Alexander's carriage passed along was a member of the People's Wheel. He had on him a bomb which he threw at Alexander's carriage. The bomb killed one of the Cossacks that was travelling with Alexander and wounded the driver of the carriage as well as numerous people on the streets. It did not harm Alexander though, as his carriage was bulletproof. So the man was arrested and Alexander got out of his carriage wanting to see who it was that had tried to kill him and to also express his sympathies for the people who had been injured. But there was another person from the People's Wheel on that street that day. He had a bomb on him which he threw at Alexander's feet. His chief of police described what happened. I was deafened by the new explosion, burned, wounded and thrown to the ground. Suddenly, amid the smoke and snowy fog, I heard His Majesty's weak voice cry, "Help!" Gathering what strength I had, I jumped up and rushed to the Emperor. His Majesty was half lying, half sitting, leaning on his right arm. Thinking he was merely wounded heavily, I tried to lift him, but the Tsar's legs were shattered, and the blood poured out of them. 20 people with wounds of varying degree lay on the sidewalk and on the street. Some managed to stand, others to crawl. Still others tried to get out from beneath bodies that had fallen on them. Through the snow, debris and blood you could see fragments of clothing, sabres and bloody chunks of human flesh. There was also actually a third bomber in the crowd that day, just in case the other 2 had failed. Alexander was taken back by sleigh to the Winter Palace where he died of his wounds. So that is all the assassination attempts on Tsar Alexander II of Russia. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!